Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate awaiting.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with another edition of Kenzie's Krimes, a deep dive into a local murder, mystery, or drama Kenzie brings to the table, and myself, in case do not know, we're like you, the listener, just hanging out, listening to a story.
On September 22nd, 1986, at 8 a.m., a parole officer visited the home of parolee on the outskirts of Indianapolis, Indiana. The visit was just routine. It had been scheduled a full week earlier. The officer, Thomas Gold, needed a urine sample from the ex-convict to test for drug usage, right? 40-year-old Michael Wayne Jackson answered his knocking at the door. He had been released 5 months earlier on weapons charges. So in 1985, just about a year previous, Michael received a 1-year sentence for his homemade bombs and firearm that were found in his vehicle. He was on 3 years parole for that violation.
Homemade bombs?
Yep, and gun. I think
they go together like peanut butter and chocolate, you know?
Yeah. Personally, I think you do the full sentence, but that's just me. He had a history of substance abuse and severe schizophrenia. He had been in and out of mental institutions his whole life, and his family adamantly disagreed with his release.
That's what they should do. They should disagree with his release when he had all that going on.
I think if the family is like, I don't think so, you should take that into consideration. But again, this is just me. The parolee was reluctant for the officer to enter his home, but of course the officer insisted. That's his job. Not long after, one of the neighbors heard shouting coming from Michael's house. He saw the officer run out of Michael's door, and Michael was running after him, firing a shotgun into his back. The neighbor kept an eye on Michael through the window while calling the police. Michael put on a dark trench coat, still holding the shotgun, and got into his green pickup truck. Indianapolis police quickly responded, heading towards the house. Michael escaped before police arrived. The FBI was immediately called because the probation officer was a federal official. The officer, Thomas Gall, had been killed instantly by a shot to the head, which is an absolute tragedy.
Oh my God.
Police started interviewing the witnesses in the neighborhood. The man who had called the police said Michael seemed agitated like the entire day, pacing around and talking to himself outside. With his release, Michael was supposed to be doing mental health check-ins and taking his medication. They felt Michael had probably stopped taking his meds leading up to this attack. Thomas Gall was a Vietnam vet and was the first federal parole officer to be killed in the line of duty.
Terrible.
He left a young family behind, 2 little kids and a wife, as well as many friends. The inside of Michael's house was described by officers as unfit for human habitation. The trash and animal feces were everywhere.
Ugh.
There was also no electricity or running water. 5 miles from the scene of the crime, another homicide was reported by witnesses. Just 20 minutes after the parole officer died, another man was shot at a convenience store by a shotgun, and a third man had been abducted. The witnesses said he had a weird disguise of grease and silver spray paint on his face and in his hair. He was robbing the convenience store and shot the cashier for taking too long. He then forced a bread delivery man into the bread truck as a hostage, leaving his pickup truck at the convenience store. Officers received a call from the bread delivery man. Michael released him at the airport unharmed, all while carjacking another person. I'm gonna pause right here because when I tell you the amount of hostages and carjackings, this becomes so absurd and so insane, and probably one of the biggest manhunts I've ever covered.
The conclusion of Kenzie's Krimes with Brian and Kenzie on Q101.
The Brian and Kenzie Show.
On Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion of Kenzie's Krimes, which is wild. The first segment was nuts, and I don't even know where it can go from here.
If you're just joining us, Michael Wayne Jackson was on probation. He'd gotten in trouble. Basically, they found homemade bombs as well as firearms in his car. He only went for 1 year and then he was on parole for 3. He also suffered from severe schizophrenia and substance abuse. His parole officer was doing a routine check on him. He killed his parole officer. He got in his truck. He drove to a convenience store. He killed the cashier. He then took the bread delivery man hostage and got in the bread delivery's truck, leaving his green pickup truck at the convenience store. This is a lot, and this is in under an hour as where we stand now. So officers received a call from the bread delivery man who was recently held hostage. Michael released him at the airport. He was unharmed. Michael was still armed and on the move. He took another vehicle at gunpoint at the airport with the woman still inside. He later let her out unharmed as well. At 9 a.m., a young mother returned to her Indianapolis home after a shopping trip. She was unpacking her bags in the driveway as Michael approached her getting out of the red pickup he had stolen at the airport. He stole her car and kept her hostage for about 15 minutes, driving with a shotgun in his lap pointed towards her. She begged to be let go, but he refused. When the car slowed down, she jumped out and he drove over her ankle. She was able to roll off the road in time to not die and be free. She was treated at a local hospital. She had escaped in Frankfort, Indiana. Officers were now looking for her sedan. So there had been 2 killings and 3 abductions in less than 2 hours, and no one knew where Michael was headed. At 10:15 a.m., Michael decided it was time to change cars once again. He barged into a Frankfort, Indiana home of a mother and child. He ordered her to get her car keys or he'd kill her as well as her son. She gave him the keys, but he then took both the mother and the son hostage in that car. Michael drove to a desolate area about 8 miles from the victim's home. Then he made them get out of the car. He also stole her wedding ring. He got back in the car and drove off. It took her about 20 minutes of walking to get to a phone to report his last known whereabouts because he really dropped her off in the middle of nowhere with her son. But luckily they were alive. They contacted the fugitive's mom, but she had no idea where he was headed. He was next spotted in St. Louis. 2 residents were carjacked by a silver-faced man. Later that afternoon, a man was driving home and he saw his wife's car. He was beeping and waving until he realized his wife was not the one driving, it was Michael. The man didn't realize Michael was also a murderer and not just a carjacker, so the man was following him and honking, and then Michael shot him at the intersection. 7 p.m., the man was able to report the shooting. Luckily, the bullet only hit the car because Michael was doing it while driving. When the man got home, he found out his wife and father-in-law had been assaulted, but luckily they were okay. The 7th vehicle carjacking in less than 5 hours then took place. So not too far away, a man was found dead behind the wheel. It seemed he had crashed driving off the road. However, upon the autopsy results, he was actually shot in the head with that same shotgun that Michael was using. A dark sedan pulled into a Missouri gas station late at night. It was Michael's 8th carjacking. He had his hostage sitting next to him in the front seat. So the attendant who was pumping the gas into the car didn't realize there was a manhunt going on, but he did think the silver-faced man was odd because he still had silver spray paint all over his face. Michael paid for the gas, but the attendant noticed the shotgun in his lap and the blood on his hands. He called the police and then updated them on the vehicle that was driving as soon as Michael drove off. Officers found the sedan at a parking lot. They radioed for backup, but it didn't come in time. One of the sergeants was shot in the head. The officer left him in the parking lot once he realized he was okay. Like the way it grazed him, it didn't go right into the head, so he was shot, but he survived. He realized it was okay and he left him there while medical attention was on the way so he could chase down Michael because they didn't want anyone else to die. As the cop chases after him, he finds the sedan abandoned about 5 miles down the road. They found the owner of the sedan locked in the trunk. Luckily, he was okay. They started an aerial search hoping they could find him running around on foot. They were unsure if he had carjacked someone new. Officers started alerting the small town community. Many locked their doors and kept their kids home from school. It had been a full week and the team still hadn't found a trace of him. They actually started stopping each car that was going onto the major highway because, again, this was a very small town that he ended up in. So one of the cars that they stopped had a man inside claiming he was actually the fugitive's nephew. He said he knew it would be possible for his uncle to survive alone in the woods. Apparently he had that ability. And he owned his own body armor. A woman on some farmland spotted a bearded fugitive running in a trench coat with a shotgun, and she called the police immediately because a lot of people lived on excess land. This is very like a farm town. So she saw him running in the distance and called the cops right away. So September 28th, 1986, they called a CIA profiler to try to give an estimate on where Michael was. He concluded that he was most likely in this small town in Missouri. They called a tracker from Tennessee. He was best known for finding Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassin after he had escaped from prison. So we need the big guns, okay? So
Sounds like the best guy.
So on September 29th, 1986, someone reported that their guest house had been broken into. Nothing was stolen, but there was a broken mirror and an open can of soup, and razors had been opened and used. The shaved hair in the sink had silver spray paint on it. So on October 2nd, officers went past a campground that had been searched previously. The campground previously had determined that it was actually abandoned. However, upon visiting this time, they realized a blue raincoat was taken. The nights were getting colder now that October had hit, and they felt that they needed to start searching abandoned shelter. They found a muddy sneaker print in a nearby barn when a single gunshot seemed to come out of nowhere. One officer was able to get out of the barn, however, the other jumped into a stable for cover and was now stuck in the barn with the fugitive. He had no radio, so his partner was communicating with him, literally yelling through the barn door. He described the layout of the barn so a team could make sure there was no escape. They shot off some rounds in order to distract the fugitive and get the tracker, who was trapped inside for several hours, out of the barn. Officers called for Michael to come out with his hands up, but he did not do so. They threw tear gas into the barn, hoping it would flush him out. Still no response. SWAT members entered the barn equipped with night vision goggles. They found a man laying in the hay bales holding a shotgun. He was dead. The shot that was fired off hours earlier, he had actually did to his own head and not at the officers.
Oh my God.
The Indianapolis U.S. Probation Office was renamed after Thomas Gall, who had lost his life in the line of duty, and again was the first parole officer to ever do so, which struck one of the craziest manhunts to ever exist.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a north side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people had done to me.
See, says Heaven's Gate away team.
Q101.